Hey everyone, Scott Cunningham, aka Scott's Business. Today, this is going to be a very long tutorial slash walkthrough, and it's how I create my thumbnails for my videos. And just a couple things before we get started. You're going to have a little bit of an idea of how to use Photoshop. Everything that I've learned is just from playing around with it. I've never done any professional courses or tutorials or anything like that. And when I really am confused on something, I'll just search it up quick on YouTube. But for the most part, I will explain as I go. This will probably be a little bit long because I'm going to be pretty in-depth and walking step by step, going through everything that I'm doing. And I'm also going to make a template from scratch rather than what I normally do is I have like 10 templates that I've made, and then I just edit them for each video. And I have a bunch of different poses that I've taken. I will just use my poses and stuff. Obviously, I'm not going to go through all of that. So before we start, the things that I would say that you should do, go look up on YouTube or Google or wherever, get a bunch of different good examples of thumbnails that you like to kind of build your idea off of that to start. I would also say if you're including yourself in your thumbnails, a good idea would be to go take a ton of different poses of yourself in like different ideally, actually what I need to do too, I need to update my poses because more ridiculous, funny looking poses usually get more clicks. So a lot of my poses are just really casual, like, me just like this. But if I had more like and stuff like that, it's way more attention grabbing, kind of clickbaity, but that's really what you do. So for example, Linus Tech Tips, he goes in front of a green screen and takes over 100 different poses, and they just use all those. So these are different tips to just save you a lot of time if you're going to be making a lot of different thumbnails. Some people go as far as to just take a cutout of them from every single video they do and make a new thumbnail every time. I think that's a waste of time. Personally, it's much faster to just create a bunch of different templates and cycle through those as long as there's enough variety. So I would say do that. Get a bunch of different like PNG elements. And I say PNG, again, I guess I'm going to break things down to make it as simple as possible. A JPEG file is just like a regular file, but a PNG file has a transparent background, which is what you want so that you can put things on and move them around, and you're not gonna have any issue with there being like a background to the picture that you have to like get rid of and cut out. Because obviously when you take all the poses of yourself originally, you're gonna have to erase the background around you and get pictures of you where it's just you and there's no background, transparent background. So what I do is I have about like 10 poses. I went and I cropped myself out of all of them, and then I saved all of them, and now I could just use them very easily. So again, it's all about making it easier for yourself in the future with your different templates. So with that being said, I'm going to share my screen here and we're going to dive into it. As you can see, I've got a bunch of different templates. These are all these different templates that I use. So I've got different ones for like interviews, and then I have all these different ones that I use for all my videos, and I kind of cycle through them. And sometimes I change things up a little bit, but for the most part, I have like a specific set that I use. I don't usually create new ones unless I'm doing specific things. So like right now, I just finished getting all of the screenshots, all of the information I need for my series on Brave browser and tutorials on this. This is going to be a really awesome series. So I created a new template just for the series, but I usually don't really create that many new templates. So what I would start off by doing is just creating a 180 by 1920, so a 16 by 9 aspect ratio, because that's what your video ratio, that's what your video thumbnail is going to look like. So I'll just use this for now to make my life easier. Or actually, no, we'll go completely from scratch so that no one's going to be like, you skipped a step on me. So there's probably the what you want. Yeah. So right here, this is the one that you're looking for. Okay. Or actually, rather, you want the width to be the opposite. So 1920 width by 1080 height. and that'll give you the exact same thing that I just had there. So there's obviously a million different things you can do. Some of the things I would say to keep in mind is you want to have a lot of depth in your thumbnail to make everything pop a lot more. So by depth, I mean I've got all these different layers here. So, you know, there's the very, very background layer. And then on top of that, I have this like paint splatter. And then on top of that, I've got these two logos, and then I have me. And then on top of that, I have the text. And on top of that, I have a foreground border. So there's very many layers, and I use shadow behind them to distinguish that there is different layers. And this creates a lot of depth, and it makes like the text and the foreground items pop a lot. And it's really good to mix different elements in as you go through. And it's really about just playing with the different styles, and you'll kind of see what works better over time as you play around with it. And it's really just testing different things out and trying different things out. And again, I said it's much, much easier if you have different templates that you like, or just like examples of other thumbnails you like, and you kind of base yours off of theirs originally, and then you can kind of play with it and add to it and change it as you need. But especially if you're just starting off, it's much easier to just go off of something that's already existing and then kind of tailor it to your own liking. I don't do a ton of things completely from scratch with no idea what I'm trying to do, right? So when I start off, I would do something like I would make a box, because I'm just going to make the outline at the very beginning here. And I'm just going to say it's blue for now. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to use the, well, originally I used the rectangle tool and create this little rectangle. And then I'll go up here and I'll use the marquee tool. I guess that's what it's called. I've never actually looked at the name of it before. And then I cut out most of it. Actually, yeah, no. So what I want to do first is I'll go to eraser, and then I have to click it and make sure that it's a regular rasterized shape. Again, people are probably going to watch this and think I have no idea what I'm doing or talking about. And that's probably good, because then that means it shouldn't be as hard for you to do. So yeah, you have to make sure that you click on it and rasterize it. Then you can go back to the marquee tool and delete that. So that kind of solves that issue there. And I'm just going to move it slightly to make sure it looks good on all sides. And then I right click it, go to blending options at the very top. And this is the bread and butter of making things look better. And then I always add drop shadow. I always add drop shadow to add depth. And you can kind of play with it as you like to make it look whatever way you want it to look. But I think this looks fine for now. And I already got the background that I liked. So, you know, you can do what you want for backgrounds, but there's a million different things you can do. And it really doesn't matter what you end up going with. But this is just what I chose. Kind of looks blurry to me. I think that was 1270. Damn. Okay, so I guess we're going to use something else. Let's see here. It's good to just get a ton of different options just to make your life way easier. Yeah, that looks a lot better. So then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to find that same... I'm going to search up like sticky note. .png. You always want PNG because it has a transparent background. It's going to make your life way easier. And if you're searching on Google, I would say go to tools and set the size to be large, because it's better if you have something that's too big rather than too small. Also, make sure it's actually a PNG, because none of these are. It would have a background like this, although this is very misleading because that's not PNG either. Actually, I think it's better if you just write transparent background. Oh man. Gotta find something that is usable. I swear it's not usually this challenging. Alright, this is it. Okay, that was kind of a struggle. So, I've got my sticky note that I wanted to use originally. Drop it in here. Again, you want PNG so that it doesn't have the background, because otherwise it would have this white background, and yeah, you can go and use magic eraser and then it would erase the whole background, which is pretty easy, but it usually leaves a jagged line going around, and it's best to avoid that just by going with a PNG file. And I highly recommend going out and looking at the different main fonts that people use on YouTube. One of the most widely used font is called Big Noodle Titling, and I highly recommend just going out and getting that. It's going to save you a lot of time, and in my opinion, it's definitely the best type of font you can use. So, what was I going to name this? How I design my video thumbnails. So, how I design and you can edit the text size by going up here, but I typically just go to this and then I hit Control T. If you have black text, typically it doesn't look good if you add shadow. And this looks good the way it is, so it actually doesn't need a shadow. But if you still do want to add that bit of an effect, I would say having a white shadow below your black text looks the best. And here's the angle here. You always have to have it angled, otherwise it looks weird. Typically, people angle their shadows to the bottom right. And I usually make it very, very, very small size, and then just bring the distance a tiny bit out. Yeah. Yeah, so that looks awesome. And I've got the pictures of myself. I don't know exactly where that is, so I'm just going to be slightly lazy and copy it from here. But once you get the pictures of yourself, obviously, you can just use them as you need. Alrighty. So then I've got my picture of me here. Drop it in. Clearly, this isn't the best image. I'm just using the eraser tool and slightly touching this up because it doesn't look as good as I would have wanted. All right, that's good enough for the most part. Yeah. And I'm just going to change the drop shadow because it's blue right now. And I usually add a little bit of a glow. A white glow, typically. Just makes it pop a little bit. And then you got your drop shadow. The spread is like how thick it is. Also, the drop shadow will go based on where you've got pixels. So if you've got like weird pixels that are like floating off of you a bit, got to make sure to delete that so that doesn't show in the drop shadow. So I'm feeling pretty good about this right now. So to make this a little less bland, we want to throw a few elements in this. And I've got a whole slew of things that I can test out here. Let me just find something interesting. Like, what's this? Abstract circles. Oh, of course, this is a JPEG. See, this is why you don't want JPEGs, because... Well, I'll just show you. So say you do have something like this, and you're like, no, I have to use this. So you would go and use the magic eraser, and then you could remove the background. But again, like if the white goes through a lot of the different areas, it's not gonna work very well for you. So you're really just best off going and getting a PNG file. And there's so many different elements and different things that you can use to add different effects and just make it pop a little bit better. I'm just trying to find a good effect here. I've overused some of these effects, so I don't know how this will look. Let's see. You got to make sure on the side here that you want to have it in the right spot for the layering. Yeah, I mean, that looks all right. Maybe I'll just change the color so it's not completely the same. So you can add a gradient. I will go with this yellow one here. Lighten. Yeah, that looks good. Then, actually, I wouldn't mind throwing some circles in here. A lot of people use dots. It creates a pretty nice effect. Of course, I have no PNG dots. Look at me saying you guys need PNG and I don't even have any. I do recommend having PNG. These look really weird, but that's fine. I'll put this behind that one. And because it looks very odd, you're going to want to blend it. So if you go to blend here, find one that like works a little bit better. Yeah, that's not bad. You know what? I will go with this. So I've decided to go with luminosity. And I've decided that these circles are too big. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make it smaller and then make sure it still kind of fits the page. And then I'm going to duplicate it. Then I'm just going to drag the other half on this side here. And there you have it. I mean, that's me going from 0 to 100. I actually kind of like it better with... because I've already used that before, I'm just going to go like this. I feel like this is pretty solid. I feel like for some reason, the resolution of me isn't as good as it could be. But, you know, I'm still pretty happy with it. I'm just also going to change the border here to be the same color blue as this blue, just so that it looks a little bit nicer. So you can change it normally, but I'm usually too lazy and I just go and do a cover overlay. And when you click on the actual color and then you click on this color, you can just do that. So now it matches a little bit better. Also, the drop shadow is too strong, it feels like. So I'm going to lower the spread. And that barely affected it. I like the size. Maybe I'm just going to lower the opacity. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Much more subtle. So I feel pretty good about this. I think I'm good to go. Normally I would add a drop shadow to this, but this already has a very slight drop shadow, so I don't want to mess around with that. Though typically you want to get one that doesn't have a drop shadow so you don't have that issue. But yeah, no, I feel pretty good about this. One thing that I skipped over a little bit is making sure that you look pretty bright and in line with the correct color. So you can use auto tone, auto contrast. Usually auto color messes it up. I mean, no, that's all right. But now it's slightly dimmer, so I'm going to go and just ever so slightly raise the exposure. Yeah. Some people might think I look too bright in my pictures because I'm extremely white, but I think having a very bright looking picture definitely makes it pop more. So That's my personal thoughts. But yeah, I think this is where I'm gonna end it off. I think this is good to go. Obviously, you can use whatever text font you like, but this is me basically creating something from scratch. The only thing that you need to do is find the right fonts that you want, get your elements and different backgrounds that you like to use, and then if you're using yourself in your photos, make sure that you get a bunch of different photos and that you can, and then crop yourself out of all of them, and then you're easily able to drop them in and use them as you need to. And yeah, I mean, if you guys have a better way, or you'd like to refer, some sort of course or something to people in the comments, feel free to do that. Let me know how you usually make your thumbnails. What's your process like? Do you use any specific apps or something that is really easy to use, like some sort of service or website? Let people know, because I've seen some, but most of them are kind of like basic and they don't look super nice, or the ones that are really nice cost money, and at that point, I'm already paying for a subscription to Adobe, so I feel much better just designing it myself. Plus, then you can keep the template, and I could use this for something else in the future and just change the wording and the pose, and then you're good to go. So let me know if you guys like this thumbnail, and if you like this tutorial. I can do more in-depth tutorials, as well as like how you edit. Maybe I'll do like a tutorial about the different elements that I use, and like how to ensure that you're getting good depth and you're creating that correct depth perception, and when to use shadows, when not to use shadows. I'm not an expert by any means. I'm not a graphic designer. This is just my opinion, and I've been creating thumbnails and using Photoshop for 5 years. So obviously I've kind of figured things out along the way. Like, you might be wondering, why didn't I add shadows to these? For a lot of background elements, if you add shadows, it just looks kind of awkward. So I'll show you. See, it looks way too distinct. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to have them pop out so aggressively. I only add shadow to things that I want to make them pop, and background elements typically are supposed to be more subtle, so I don't add shadow. And then the foreground elements, you do want the shadow to show that they're in the foreground. So always keep that in mind for the depth perception of the video thumbnail. Anyways, thank you for sticking around. I hope you guys learned something. Someone requested that I do this, so I figured I'd finally get around to it. So here you go. And yeah, if you watch to the very end, make sure to comment #1ham. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Again, let me know in the comments if you have any more questions, or you'd like to see more tutorials, or if you think I skipped over something or missed something, make sure to let me know. And you're amazing. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I'm Scott Cunningham, aka Scott's Business, signing off. Cheers.